started today. How are we all doing? Whoa. What a week, eh? Yeah, let's just all take one big deep breath together. We are here. It's been a week. And for the students, it has been a doozy few years. So what we're going to do today is we're going to celebrate and honor and be inspired. So before we get started, make sure I'm going the right way. I just want to take a second to just acknowledge the land that we're currently on, and that's the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. Every day, I hope we have the opportunity to offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations, and may we honor those teachings. So for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, hello, my name is Stephanie Muehletaler, and I'm the principal here in Otonabee College and your MC for today. I am absolutely thrilled that we are in a new location, Stone Hall, and we even have our namesake, Stephen Stone, here today to grace us with his presence. I want to thank everyone and just welcome all of you here today, Trent staff, Trent faculty, the supporters, the alumni, and most importantly, you, the graduating students. So let's give a round of applause to those graduating today. Thank you to our special guests for being here, our four esteemed speakers, our Vice President of Communications and Enrollment, Marilyn Burns, Stephen Stone, our Chancellor, and all of our different college staff and principals as well. So I've thought a lot about just the experience. How many of you are graduating? Just putting your hands up. So a large number of you are graduating. Yes, you are graduating. I thought a lot about the experiences that you've had and rewrote a lot of my speech. You all started out in COVID, and yes, we all remember 5 years ago, and you're ending your time with this crazy last week. And so what this just reaffirms for me is that this graduating class can handle anything and pretty much everything. So I'm hopeful that today at 4:05-ish on this Friday, it really is your last lecture of your university career. This is a huge milestone and one that I'm so excited that we get to gather here today and celebrate all that you've done and what comes next. Over the last 3, 4, 5 years, give and take, I know whatever path you took, we've all had the privilege of developing relationships and witnessing your journey to complete your undergraduate degree. So thank you, and I do hope you really find these next 4 talks inspiring and that you'll be able to take a few nuggets on your journey after Trent. Okay, so the last lecture is an annual event that we have here at Trent University, and it happens also at some of our neighboring institutions. It is inspired by Randy Pausch. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University in the States, in Pittsburgh, I believe, and they did an event called The Last Lecture. And he was a professor there, he spoke about achieving your childhood dreams. And an excerpt of his talk was featured on the Oprah show. It was first on YouTube and went viral before we had all the social medias. And then it was turned into a book. But the unique part really is that he was, in that moment, dying of pancreatic cancer, so it was really his last lecture. And so schools have taken this concept and we have taken it, made it our own because, and I will mention this a few times, it's such a wonderful way to show gratitude, to celebrate, and it's the closest thing we have for the graduating class to a valedictorian. So we're very excited for that. Thank you again for all of those in working on today's project and today's event. If you want to take photos, it's being recorded. It will be on YouTube, and tag your college if you post anything on social media. So how did we get here? How did we get to today? So I asked 3,000 or so potential graduating students from last fall, the winter, and also this upcoming summer, who has made an impact on your career here at Trent. And we had over 100 different nominations and just the most beautiful testimonials of the people that had touched their lives, faculty, staff, and students. So that's how we got to our speakers today. For the next hour or so, you will hear from 4 different speakers to share their own stories and their words of wisdom. We have asked them to reflect on how they have been challenged in the way that they think. And so I do hope that you will be inspired in one way or another. Before we get started, I would like to ask folks to turn off their cell phones, if at all possible, or put them on silent. So with no further ado, I would like to first introduce our alumni speaker, Jessica Ferguson. Jessica Ferguson is a proud Trent alumnus, graduating in 1994 with a BA in Psychology and Sociology as a member of Otonabee College. So I'm not biased, but that's amazing. Woo, OC. Her connection to Trent runs deep, not only as a student, but also as a place where she met her hubby, Ted, a fellow OC alumni. We also love stories here at Trent. Now, based in Ottawa, Jessica has built a dynamic career in human resources, bringing over 20 years of operational HR experience to organizations of all sizes. As the founder of her own HR advisory practice, she works as an independent consultant, providing expertise in human resource operations, talent solutions, strategic change, and business management solutions. Beyond consulting, Jess is a skilled facilitator, and that's hard work, I know. Designing and delivering training and team-building programs focused on leadership, management, and employee development. Committed to lifelong learning, she has become an associate coach with Integral Coaching Canada and is a dedicated coach and mentor, particularly passionate about supporting emerging HR professionals as they grow into their careers. Let's please give Jess a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. With that introduction, it's a funny space of like facilitator, and then I'm nervous about this speech, but it's okay. We're going to get through this together. Put my water down there. Thank you for having me. I'm very thrilled to be here. It's fun to be back as an alumni. It's a great honor. It's really fun. And it was fun to walk around the campus and have a look at things that have changed and some things that have not changed. Some things have stayed very much the same. All right, so it's truly an honor to be here today. Welcome. And I just want to think about why we're here and what I was offered. When I was invited to speak, I reflected on how meaningful this opportunity is, not just to share my experience, but to engage in an important conversation that has profoundly shaped my life. I believe it could be meaningful for you to ponder too as you move into your graduation space. I know that among our audience today are students, faculty, members of the community who are passionate about learning and growth, and I'm really grateful to be here and part of this dialogue today. Thank you for having me. When I graduated from Trent in 1995, I was eager to explore the world with deep curiosity about how we define our experiences. That curiosity has guided me through my career, as I've already pointed out, in HR, coaching, and leadership, as well as my personal journey as a citizen, parent, partner. The theme and the motto for this year is great, challenge the way you think. So when I think back about how did Trent challenge the way I think, I easily come up with a single example. Though there were many lessons that I took away from my experience here that I could share with you today, I want to focus on one specific lesson. It came from a single question that changed how I saw the world and how I approached the world. I'll start with that question. What is normal? This was the opening challenge, opening assignment. I see some head nods. It's still happening. In my first year sociology class, it was a single-page description at the time of how would we, as students, describe a normal family dinner. In that moment, the assignment seemed rather straightforward and simple. I went back to my dorm room, F house, OC, and I attempted to complete my first assignment. And as I started to think about defining this normal family dinner, I was quite overwhelmed with the magnitude of the question. What is a normal family? What is a normal dinner? What is a normal family dinner? And when I started to explore this, I got really nervous that this was a much bigger question. And it continues to come with me. So I started thinking, what were some of the other members of my class going to define as normal? Would my experience be seen as normal? Would my description make me stand out or fit in? How did my perception of normal compare to my actual experience of family dinners growing up? Was I going to describe what I thought a normal family dinner should be? Or was I going to describe what my family dinners were like. And this element of normal became really part of a theme. It doesn't end there. Once this thought process starts to gain speed, you're asking this question constantly. I've been doing it for 30 years. How much sleep is normal? How much personal space is normal? What level of fear is normal? How much discomfort is normal? Is normal desirable or is normal boring? How does exposure, media, influence from others define our own definition of normal? We spent that entire first term unpacking this one question, and I was guided to the realization that normal is not a fixed truth. It's a construct shaped by culture, experience, and perception. We examined how societies normalize behaviors, beliefs, and systems, creating both inclusion and exclusion in a single term. What started as a seemingly straightforward question not only challenged us first-year students to see our own experiences differently, but we began to explore the experience of others through this lens. And that single lesson has stayed with me for 30 years, since graduation. I've explored it in a variety of ways. I've actively challenged normal in the workplace. In my early HR career, especially in recruitment and career development, I saw firsthand how normal can be a limiting force. Was it normal for a woman to be at an executive table? Was it normal for men to be in caring roles? I know these questions make me sound really old, and I also know we're still grappling with these questions. I was an early adopter of the belief that there were many pathways to success, and often workplace norms are simply crafted to protect those that define them. I challenged the idea of if there was a normal amount of time before someone could be promoted, if there was a normal amount of time before someone could actually adopt or learn a skill, build new relationships, be comfortable speaking up about the status quo. Professionally, this shift in perspective has allowed me to see potential where others saw limitations, and I was able to grow my own career as well as support and enable the career of others. I challenge normal in relationships too. Beyond my career, this lesson has influenced me as a parent, a partner, a sibling, a friend. What is a normal family dynamic? What's a normal amount of time between visits with your parents? A normal amount of sleep. That changed a lot when we had children. A normal amount of work, a normal level of support needed in a crisis, and a normal amount of alone time. When my husband and fellow Trent alumni and I began our family, we both arrived at this place with our own experiences of what family dynamic was: traditions, parental expectations, parental influence, and we had to actively challenge each other to shape what normal was to us and what normal would be like for our children. Was it normal that we balanced academics with social skills and athletics, while other parents were prioritizing academic results? What felt normal to us was often fiercely judged by other parents, but perhaps they were also just defending their version of normal. We were aware our children brought our version of normal to their own experiences and relations, and now are crafting their own version of normal. The truth is, normal's deeply personal. Understanding this has allowed me to approach relationships with greater empathy and much more flexibility. Normal in society is also challenging. Today, as an advisor, a coach, a facilitator, I'm encouraging my clients all the time to challenge not just the word normal, but any other deeply ingrained concepts as well. What is enough? What is beautiful? What is success? These words are like normal. They carry the assumptions that can limit and liberate us, depending on how we define them. Dr. Gabor Mate, in his book, The Myth of Normal, applies this idea to current medicine practices, questioning how much pain, discomfort, or recovery is considered normal in the healthcare system. We all know from experience, every body is different. Yet access to resources and compassionate care is often limited to and defined by what academics and small scope studies have defined as normal. In this challenge, I am most inspired by the current and next generation of leaders, many of your graduates today. This work is never ending. So, as our future leaders, I leave you with this challenge. Take a moment. Examine the things you consider normal in your life. Question them, redefine them, re-question them. See what other perspectives might emerge, because when we challenge normal, we open ourselves up to a world of deeper understanding, inclusion, and possibility. I'm grateful to Trent for challenging the way I think, and I am shocked at how many times I use this version of normal and that reflection of that time in that sociology class as part of the way I communicate with people. Thank you so much for having me here today, and congratulations to those who are graduating.
Thank you so much, Jess. So many thoughts in my own head, and it's just so beautiful to know that one question, and maybe you all have your own question or your own moment that has challenged you and will stay with you for a lifetime, and know that you had that here. I think that's so beautiful and special, and I think unique about Trent. So thank you very much, Jess. Our next speaker today, oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. One more? No, there we go. Wonderful. Our next speaker that you all selected that had an impact on all of you is Susan Thompson, our academic skills instructor in Champlain College. Susan completed her undergraduate degree in sociology at Trent in the early 90s and began using her education immediately as a community development worker and researcher at the Peterborough Social Planning Council. After 15 years in the nonprofit sector, Susan returned to Trent in the early 2000s to complete her master's degree in Canadian Studies. Susan fully intended to return to the community work after completing her MA, but the opportunity of full-time work in Trent's School of Business presented itself. This temporary appointment has turned into a 15-year-long career as a teaching assistant and part-time course instructor. In 2019, Susan moved into her role of academic skills instructor in Champlain College, which she currently holds. Through her time at Trent, Susan felt fortunate enough to have worked and learned alongside students, staff, and faculty who have inspired, challenged, and enriched the way she thinks about life, people, and so many other things. Let's please give Susan a warm welcome.
Okay, that's enough. All right. All right. Okay, hi everyone. I'm so honored and pleased to be here today as the staff speaker. And as Steph mentioned, I have worked at Trent for over 20 years now in different roles supporting students. But I also want to acknowledge that, as you said, lots of people were nominated to be the staff speaker. And so, we are so lucky to be in this environment where we are supported by, and I feel so lucky to be supported by all of these wonderful staff people, like my fellow academic skills instructors, academic advisors, college assistants, SAS instructors, and counselors, librarians, and the list just goes on. In total, Trent employs almost 550 people at this staff support level, so it's pretty amazing. And I just wanted to ask you a quick favor, because I feel like, although you just gave me so much energy, but I just wanted to ask you, if you feel like you've ever been supported by a staff person here at Trent, just could you give me a show of appreciation for all these great staff people at Trent? That's great. Everybody clap. That's amazing. I do want to acknowledge it's been a really tough week for all of us. This great ice storm is one for the books for sure. And because of that, my power went out, my internet went out, I didn't have a laptop, and I was struggling to get this kind of speech written. And you know what I did? I just came into work and I just read over the things that the students said that had nominated me. And, oh, now I'm going to cry. No, I'm not. But what it did was it inspired me to write what I've written today, because what they talked about was how I'd supported them. But I know I'm not the only one supporting them. So here we go. As an academic skills instructor, I see a lot of first-year students who are adjusting to their new lives at Trent. Many students find this transition from high school to university a little bumpy, right? All of a sudden, the familiar routine of your day changes. Unlike high school, a day of classes in university might start at 10 in the morning, end at 3 in the afternoon. But it might start at 3 in the afternoon and end at 10 at night, right? To make things worse, no 2 days are the same. On top of this, you've got instructors asking, you know who you are, asking you to read and understand new ideas and complete assignments with strange sounding names like critical reflective analysis or scoping review, or dare I say even the un-essay, right? In high school, your teachers got to know you, your learning style, your strengths and your challenges. But once in university, many students must restart this process of reintroducing themselves to their instructors. And, on top of being in this new environment, it's not easy. And you might recall feeling a little bit scared and lost. So today in this short address, I'm going to argue, though, that the reason you are here today, taking your last lecture and getting ready to process across that graduation stage, is that somewhere along the way, when you felt lost, untethered, maybe a little terrified, you asked for and accepted some help. And that's not an easy thing to do. And it's not easy because I think there are a lot of barriers to us asking for help. And most of those barriers, I think, are imposed, things that we impose on ourselves. There are these nagging little voices in our heads that are telling us, no one can really help me. My problem isn't serious enough. I don't want to be a burden. It's going to look bad if I ask for help, and so on. So I want to spend this time together just challenging the way we think about accepting and giving support. Now, first, you're going to be asking, what makes me, Susan, an expert on this topic? Well, it might be hard to believe, but I was once young, scared, and lost, and enrolled at Trent University. I was the first person in my family to go to university, so it was a very unfamiliar setting. Not only that, but I was a single mom. I was living on student loans, and I was raising a young daughter, desperately trying to give her and myself a better life. Academic life was confusing and a new experience. Reading Plato's Republic, Karl Marx's Das Kapital, and writing papers on them was the most challenging task I'd ever been asked to do. But then I remembered I had a 2-year-old who was temperamental and stubborn, and she was pretty challenging too, and she's sitting right over there. Okay, I don't want to talk all about me, but because we're here to celebrate you, but I do want to tell you about a few other situations I found myself in where I felt completely lost and terrified. So first, after I did worked for 15 years doing anti-poverty work in the social service sector, I returned to university to complete a master's degree, and that was terrifying. And then while I was working on my master's, I was hired at Trent School of Business as a full-time teaching assistant. And I felt really lost and out of place at that job because after working for so long with people who were impacted by the negative consequences of a capitalist system, I was hired in a department to teach students who were really interested in becoming capitalists. So that was a little hard. But don't worry, because this is Trent, right? And we challenged them the way they thought about capitalism. And a lot of that's to do with you right there, Radar. So how did I navigate my way through these challenges? Well, I wouldn't have made it through my undergrad if I hadn't challenged the idea that no one could really help me. And I reached out to some amazing profs who helped me clarify what they meant about those confusing assignments. And I can guarantee that that master's degree would have stayed on the hard drive of my computer. Yep, that's where we stored them back in the olden days. If I hadn't challenged the idea that I had to figure things out by myself, and I asked my thesis committee and my work supervisor for help, and I listened to them when they told me I was valued and my work was valuable. And I would never have learned how to mark papers and run seminars until I stopped telling myself that people like Ray Dart would get annoyed if I kept asking for help. So as I conclude this talk, I also want to challenge the idea that because you're young and because you don't have a lot of experience, you're going to be mostly on the receiving end of the support spectrum. And in fact, as Trent students, I'm arguing that you're better equipped than many to move into supporting roles for others. And I know this because I see evidence of how Trent students support each other daily. From college ambassadors who are helping students register for courses or find answers to their questions or book appointments, to the amazing peer mentors and students acting in governance roles on TCSA and cabinets. Yeah, I see you. You have been part of an incredible network of peer support that has helped you get here today. So my final pieces of advice, if you need help, just ask. No one's going to think you're a burden or get annoyed, and they will take your problem seriously, even if you don't think it's important enough to ask for help. And if someone asks you for help, perhaps you will think back to your Trent days and find inspiration from that academic advisor like Beth or Ryan or a bunch of you that are up there, and that made you feel important and valued. Maybe you're going to remember how a college ambassador like Sabrina and Zainab, I see a bunch of you out there, helped you navigate the maze-like spaces of Trent to find your classrooms. And perhaps you might recall how an academic skills instructor like Natalie, Marisha, I see you up there, Kyle, Sumiko, how they listened as you passionately explained your ideas for a paper and helped you figure out your next steps. And I know you won't hesitate to pay it forward. Thank you so much for your kind attention today. And congrats.
Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing and for challenging us again to reach out, because there are folks here, and it's, to me, asking for help is always a sign of strength. And so we do have a strong student body here today. So next is the faculty speaker our students chose. So it's Dr. Eric Sager. Eric grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and is the child of not one, but two academics. He completed his BA in biology from Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin, and then came to Trent to complete his Master's of Science in Watershed Ecosystems Graduate Program. I don't even know what that means, but great. And the PhD in Environmental and Life Sciences graduate program. He then took a sessional position with the Environmental and Resource Studies program, where one of his tasks was to help develop a new joint degree program in ecological restoration with Fleming College. He has since been teaching in and coordinating that program for the college for the past 18 years, and while at the same time maintained his connection with Trent as an adjunct in the School of Environmental and Life Sciences graduate program, as well as the Master's in Sustainable Studies. He also has the privilege of living with his family at Trent's Oliver Ecological Center, a 270-acre property located in the north shore of Pigeon Lake, since its donation in 1998. Eric's research has always been strongly community-based, where he has worked with some amazing students, and maybe some of you are here today or have nominated him, and colleagues on a diverse number of topics related to an ecosystem management and restoration throughout the Great Lakes region and northern Canada. To say he has a good life is an understatement. Let's give a warm round of applause to Dr. Eric Sager.
Thank you. This 10-minute thing gets you on the clock, and it puts a little pressure on you. So I've actually made a few notes. But I think the first two talks have really set up a really nice frame, and of a narrative that works. This concept of normal has gotten us into trouble. I'm thinking of it from an environmental perspective, but really in terms of the extent to which we define our relationships with anything. And community and asking for help is sometimes one of the hardest things to do, because the earlier generations, I think we are often taught, you have to figure it out on your own. You have to persevere by yourself. And asking for help was often a sign of weakness. But like many, I sort of struggled with how to frame a usable narrative. I had some excellent suggestions from other faculty about, beds of roses and jumping cars over the St. Lawrence and aim high. Anyway, that's an inside joke, sorry. But I came across a quote that Trent's new president, Kathy Bruce, had in the most recent newsletter: "The value we place on meaningful and consequential engagement with one another and with the world around us." And then something snapped for me, something fit. And so I don't feel that I have the tools to talk about necessarily sort of the relationships we have in a social sense, but I do have some experience in talking about those relationships we have with the world around us, and that's sort of where I want to jump off from. I tell our guys in our program on the first day of class, I steal this from a good friend, Dan Longboat, that everything we're about to teach you for the next 4 years, we know doesn't work. We apologize for that. But what we're hoping is that some of you, as you sort of progress through this thing we call an undergraduate, are able to take this tea of ideas that we've jammed into your heads in such a short amount of time, and you're able to brew something new, and that some new tools are going to be made. And so now that you are all done, congratulations. For those of you that are close to being done, congratulations. This is where the magic begins. I remember at the end of my undergraduate being lost, literally being lost, and kind of wondering, what did I just experience? Then that first summer, being up on the shores of Lake Superior, and all of a sudden making some connections between these disparate philosophy courses that I was taking and this sort of, plant ecology course, and all of a sudden there was a new connection there for me. And I think that's the sort of thing that's going to happen for you. And so, challenging the way we think, that's an everyday event. That's an everyday event for you, probably while you're at school, even just navigating how to get to school. So I try to give you some insights maybe in terms of some of the things that have worked for me and some of the things that I pass on. And I'll tell you right up, none of these are my ideas, because I don't think I'm smart enough to know some of these things myself. So I borrow. I'm always borrowing. I'm reading Richard Wagamese' book right now, Keeper in Me. And in the start of that book, he opens it up with a narrator by Keeper, the elder. And he has a line in there: "We're all looking for a guide to help us just to get through and to where we want to go." And so these are some of the guides that I draw on regularly. And you'll have your own guides that you will draw on as you move forward and have had to get you to where you are today. As Stephanie said, I'm a product of two academics. So I think we all are sort of starting with family. My mother was a reproductive toxicologist. She studied the effects of PCBs on reproduction. She had rats, so we spent many days on the weekends playing with baby rats, only to watch her euthanize them and dissect them. My father was a limnologist. He was a phosphorus guy, interacting with David Schindler in the early days of understanding the concepts of eutrophication in the Great Lakes. Both parents were rigid scientists, and in their world, science worked. They discovered that PCBs were toxic. They passed that up the food chain. Policy came along and said, guess what? We're going to ban PCBs. They discovered that phosphorus is one of the leading causes of eutrophication. They passed that up the food chain. Policy listens. They restrict the amount of phosphorus going into the Great Lakes ecosystems. We see recovery in those ecosystems with a little help from zebra mussels. Little plug there for the invasive. But what has happened since then? And I think my father, didn't expect that. In my father's last days of dementia and Alzheimer's, we had lots of conversations. And one of the things we talked about was the return of the phosphorus levels, of all the strange things that Alzheimer's brings up in terms of what they anchor onto. Very lucid moment, and it brought back this concept of, hey, wait a minute, I was a limnologist, I studied this concept of eutrophication. He said, whatever we were doing back then isn't going to work now. So we have to find a new way to communicate. And then literally 2 days later, he passed. And that triggered in me, Emerson writes in his Nature essay, he describes the poet. And it's the poet who sees all. Sorry, that's it for that. I got through that one. And so I think you have to find your poetic voice, because we have to figure out a way to communicate. We have lots of problems in how we're communicating right now, both people to people, but also both people to natural ecosystems. Thoreau was another guide that I draw on a lot. And in the 1850s, he's already writing about this concept of simplify, simplify, simplify. And he's making comments mocking what we see as important, in terms of the developments of the European colonists of that day, that here, look at my big fancy home. Look at all these fancy things I'm hanging up, and Thoreau mocked them for the fact that they were cold. They weren't even that efficient, They were wastes of space. Why bother? He writes a poem, "What's the railroad to me? I never go to see where it ends. It fills a few hollows, makes banks for the swallows. It sets the sand a-blowing and the blackberries a-growing." Like, think about the technology of the railroad of the day. Like, it was a thing. It's cool. It was amazing to go watch. And he's just like, I'm not impressed by the technology. It's kind of boring. And we also, I think today I tell my students who all have these smartwatches on, and they just call me a Luddite. I was like, what's the true cost of the smartwatch? What's the true cost of the cloud? We just assume it's there, but there's a cost to it. And I think those are the things we have a responsibility, you have a responsibility to start to communicate. And it's hard. It's a hard message because people don't want to hear it. As a young parent, how am I doing for time? You're fine, you're good. As a young parent, the beauty of children's literature. I was teaching lectures. Tom Willens, his supervisor, Henry Regier, when I was doing my master's with Tom, came up and he gave this eloquent lecture on the concept of ecological integrity. And I was like, I got to use that in class. I got to figure out a way to communicate that concept. And so the first lecture, I tried to do it like Henry did it, and it failed just flat. And then the next year, I was reading a book to the kids, and I was like, wow, there it is. There's a concept. There's a really easy way. So then becomes my infatuation with the Lorax and the Wump world. So grade 5 class, I'm reading the Lorax through these kids and telling the whole story. And we're going through thneeds, and we're going through, this whole idea, what's a thneed? It's something that everybody needs. And we end with the famous quote, "Unless anybody cares." And so we sit around afterwards and we take it up with these 5th graders. And I'm like, so what do you think's going on here? And this little boy sitting in the back of the room who says nothing ever through the year raises his hand and he goes, seems like we have a problem in understanding the difference between a need and a want. And that's all he says. So 5th graders can figure that out, but we can't. So that's another one you guys have to figure out. And so just to wrap this up, I have to say something about Bill Peet's Wump World, which was written before the Lorax. In fact, Dr. Seuss says he gets his motivation to write the Lorax from Wump World, so shout out to the Wumps. I make my students take an oath at the beginning of every year. Raise your right hand. They have to read it to a nephew, a niece, their own kids, their parents, and if they don't, they fail. So all of you, raise your right hand. Now, Wump World is about the pollutions from the planet Pollutus who come and colonize this planet called the Wumps. And the Wumps are kind of like a wildebeest, and they're just happily living on bumberbooch shoots. And then the pollutants come and they destroy Wump World, and the Wumps go underground, and then the air gets so bad that the pollutants leave and the Wumps come back out. And they discover this changed planet that is full of skyscrapers and destruction, kind of like, what we create on a regular basis. And they go exploring, and at the end they find one more little bumbershoot growth. In time, the murky skies would clear up, and the rains would wash the scum from the rivers and the lakes. The tall buildings would come tumbling down, and the freeways would crumble away. And in time, the green growth would wind its way up through the rubble, but the Wump World would never be quite the same. That's kind of where we're at. Things aren't going to be the same. We can't expect them to be the same. We shouldn't expect them to be the same. But we need to make sure that that little green shoot has an opportunity to grow. Science has a lot of the answers already to figure this out. We know this. But what we don't know is we don't know how to translate that so that we can create the will to do it. And that's your challenge. We all need to make these meaningful connections to the world. You need to make meaningful connections to the natural world. But you also need to convince, persuade, argue for the others to do it as well, so that we can create that consensus. And we don't know how to do that. We do know that you can't just scream at somebody and make it happen. And so we have to find new ways. And to me, that is the biggest challenge that we face. And it's not just relationships to the natural world. It's relationships with each other as well. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Eric. As an older mom with a very young little one, I often reflect on the power of children's literature and the messages it tells us. And I am dating myself, but your talk brought me right back to the Smoggies and the Sun Tots, which is the TV show, Beth knows what I'm talking about, in the early 80s that talked about the pollution and just how instrumental that was in my own understanding of our role as citizens of this world. So thank you very much. It is now my honor to welcome your student speaker. And this is the closest thing we get to a valedictorian here at Trent. And I'm honored, I might clump up, because I know this individual, and she is just such a wonderful teacher in my life. So I would like to welcome Paris Amery, who is a fourth-year major honors student in Forensics and Anthropology here at Trent, who specializes in bioarchaeology with an option in pre-medical studies. Whew. Throughout her time at Trent, that's a mouthful, she has been actively involved in various extracurriculars, including, it's a long list, so bear with me, the Forensic Science Society, the Anthropology Society, the Kappa Sigma Psi sorority. She's also dedicated multiple years as an orientation week leader for OC, and then transitioned to a student staff role in our college office. Beyond academics, Paris is a content creator. Maybe you've seen her on Trent's Instagram lately. Yes, who romanticizes her student life and promotes positivity and wellness. Recently, she was accepted to Trent's Masters of Forensic Science program. We get to keep her for one more year and is excited to continue her journey in making the most of her final year as an undergraduate here at Trent. Let's give it up for Paris Amery.
Thank you, Steph. I'm deeply honored to be standing here today. After 4 years of sleepless nights, coffee runs, and far too many last-minute essays, we made it. And standing here in front of all of you, I'm filled with so much gratitude, excitement, and let's be honest, a little bit of disbelief. Today is more than just a celebration of what we've accomplished. It's an opportunity to acknowledge the challenges we've faced, the lessons we've learned, and the growth that came from stepping outside our comfort zones. My goal tonight is to share the experiences that shaped me over the last 4 years, the moments that tested my strength, helped me discover my passions, and taught me that success doesn't always follow a straight path. I hope my stories inspire you to embrace the unexpected, to take risks, and to reframe how you view failure. As we look forward to a new chapter, I want to remind each of us that the greatest opportunities often lie just beyond what feels safe. So let me take you back to where my journey began, a journey that was anything but predictable. 4 years ago, I left behind everything I knew in Calgary, Alberta. I packed up my life, said goodbye to my family, and boarded a plane to Peterborough, Ontario. Moving across the country was one of the hardest things I had ever done. I had only flown once before, and the thought of leaving behind the comfort of home to a place that felt so unfamiliar was daunting. Luckily, I wasn't alone. I was fortunate enough to have my high school best friend by my side. Together, we took a leap of faith, leaving everything behind to embrace something new. And that leap led me to my next defining moment. When I first arrived at Trent, I was fortunate to be a part of the Forensic Living Learning Community, or LLC, a space where I met students who shared a passion for forensic science. But the LLC gave me more than just academic connections. It introduced me to people who would become my greatest sources of support. The connections I made through the LLC went far beyond the classroom. Among those connections were my roommates, who became my closest friends. We tackled every challenge together, late-night study sessions, tough lab reports, and moments where giving up seemed easier than pushing through. But their constant encouragement reminded me why I started and gave me the strength to keep going. It also introduced me to someone who has become an anchor, my partner. I met him in my first year, and he's been by my side ever since. He stood by me through the highs and lows, pushing me to keep going when things felt impossible, and reminding me that I never had to face life's challenges alone. That's the power of relationships. Whether it's your friends, your family, or your partner, these are the people who show up when things get hard, who remind you of who you are when you lose sight of it, and who encourage you to become the best version of yourself. And all these incredible relationships, this unwavering support system, can be traced back to one idea: to be open to something different. As I found a family that shaped my experience, strengthened my resilience, and helped me become the person I am today. All of this taught me one of the most important lessons of all, that life is not linear. The course we set out on doesn't always look like the one we finish, and that's okay. Plans change, people change, we change. And through it all, life changes us, not just through classes and assignments, but through the experiences that push us, break us down, build us back up, and force us to grow in ways we never expected. This realization was pivotal, and it prepared me for the unexpected turns that would come next. Coming to Trent, I wasn't the confident leader standing before you today. I was just a girl trying to figure out how to navigate university life, juggling academics, making friends, and discovering where I fit in. But I quickly realized that growth happens when you step into the unknown, take chances, and trust yourself, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. And trust me, stepping outside of mine was not easy. I took risks, some big, some small, some worked out, and others, well, let's just say I had a character-building moment. That lesson became a guiding principle for everything I did, because university isn't just about those good grades or those perfect plans. It's about learning who you are, and more importantly, who you are becoming. Now, I want you to remember that growth doesn't happen without setbacks, rejections, or failures. And trust me, I've had my fair share. For starters, I applied to be a part of the Forensic Science Society in my first year. I was eager to get involved and contribute, but I didn't get in. So, in my second year, I reapplied. And this time, I was accepted as the advertising representative. I was beyond excited and used my creativity to engage with students and promote events. It felt like I had finally found where I belonged. But just when I thought things were falling into place, life had another lesson in store for me. So in third year, I decided to go one step further, and I applied for co-president. I was ready, determined, and confident, but I didn't get the position. And even more, I lost my place on the executive team. It was devastating. I had poured so much of myself into that club, and suddenly it felt like I was back at square one. But setbacks have a way of pointing us in new directions. That setback was tough, but instead of letting it discourage me, I redirected my energy. I became an orientation week leader, helping incoming students transition into university life. That experience, transformative. I worked with an incredible team guiding new students through those uncertain first weeks, and in the process, I discovered a deep passion for mentoring and supporting others. I proceeded to take on a new role at the Otonabee College office, where I had an even greater impact, helping students as they navigated their academic journey. It was during that time that I realized this is where I thrive, helping others feel confident as they navigate unfamiliar territory. While I was exploring these new passions, an opportunity arose that brought me back to where my heart had always been. A position for joint major representative in the Forensic Science Society became available. I was excited, but hesitant. I felt the stigma that comes with trying again after failure, like somehow coming back means admitting defeat. But I challenged that mindset. If I was still passionate about making a difference, why should I let fear hold me back? So I applied, and this time, I was successful. Being a part of the society again was everything I had hoped for, but I knew I had to prove that I was still capable of making a meaningful impact. So I created the first ever Forensic Amazing Race, an event that introduced students to different forensic disciplines and highlighted the many paths they could explore. By second semester of my third year, I had the honor of becoming co-president. But none of this would have happened if I had given up after that initial rejection. I didn't let failure define me. I didn't let setbacks diminish my potential. Failure is a part of the process. It's how we step into something greater and learn to never give up on our passions. And while building on one passion, another passion was quietly taking shape: social media and content creation. Growing up, I never imagined it was something I could be good at or even succeed in, but the curiosity was always there. Coming to Trent gave me a chance to explore that dream. It all started with documenting my life as a forensic student on Instagram, then joining a sorority full of empowering women that pushed me to grow, to step up my social media skills, to find my voice, and to use my platform with purpose. That small leap of faith, posting that first reel, changed everything. It led to opportunities I never could have imagined. I began collaborating with Trent University to create content that supported the next generation of students, helping them ask questions and feel confident about their transition to university life. Now, I want to remind you, success looks different for everyone. For some of us, success is securing a dream job right after graduation. For others, it's taking a gap year to travel and explore. And for some, it's simply making it through each day with the courage to keep going. But no matter what success looks like for you, never let anyone else define it. Own your story. And while you're at it, find your passion. Find what works for you and pursue it relentlessly. Whether it's academics, sports, or something you haven't even discovered yet, chase what sparks your curiosity. Because when you do, everything changes. You start showing up differently. You start believing in yourself. And that's where the magic happens. Now, looking back on everything we've accomplished, we can tie it back to one powerful idea: to challenge the way you think. If there's one thing I've learned throughout this experience, it's that we grow the most when we dare to think differently, when we question our assumptions, embrace new perspectives, and allow ourselves to be uncomfortable in the pursuit of something greater. So as we move forward with this moment, I want you to remember to challenge what you think is possible, to challenge the narrative that failure is the end, and to challenge the belief that you have to have it all figured out, because the truth is, you don't, and that's okay. As we close this chapter and step into the next, I want you to own your story, the wins, the losses, the messy middle, all of it. I came here thinking I had my future all figured out, but if there's anything these 4 years have taught me, it's that the best thing in life often happens when we let go of the plan and embrace the unknown, because everything you've experienced has led you to this exact moment. And trust me, the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paris, and we're just so excited to see, because we'll see it on Instagram, but where you're, so if you don't follow her, please follow her. She'll give you her handle later, but you'll see her on Instagram, and congratulations once again. I think what's so beautiful is all these little mini stories and all the learning that we're going to take and what resonates with you, and so I asked Stephen if he was comfortable on the spot to share what has stood out for him over the last 40, 50 minutes and what he is going to take away. And if you haven't met Stephen, do take the opportunity. He is such a fabulous, warm. Okay, and now let's introduce Stephen Stone, our Chancellor.
Thank you, Steph. And thank you, Jessica and Susan and Eric and Paris. Such inspirational words from all of you, and very different words in some ways, whether it's normalcy or giving and receiving advice and help, things that don't work, and pushing outside your comfort zone and embracing and not being afraid of failure. Just move forward. But what came also to me was that there is a theme throughout all of this, and yes, it's thinking in different ways, but it's a very, very Trent theme. I went to Trent back in the mid-1960s when Trent was first formed. And back in those days, we talked about the education at Trent as being a liberal arts education. Those were the words that were used. Liberal arts has sort of fallen out of favor, particularly in the United States. And people said, oh, no, you've got to learn to code. You've got to learn math. You've got to learn particular disciplines and excel in those. Trent hasn't been like that. That's not at the forefront of a liberal arts education. Trent is about thinking in different ways, a multidisciplinary approach to learning, a more personalized approach to learning. And what you've talked about today really epitomizes that, and in a wonderful way. The next few years, as you graduate, Eric, as you said, the magic is just beginning. The journey is just beginning. The next few years are going to be the most exciting years in the history of humanity. Exciting and scary. But the foundation that you have from your studies here at Trent and your interactions here at Trent are teaching you to approach this exciting, scary time, to approach it with different ways of thinking. And that is going to be, that liberal arts way of thinking is going to be the thing that pulls us through the good times and the bad times. So I want to congratulate you. You have now a foundation. You have a secret superpower from being here at Trent University, thinking in different ways, which is going to be so important as artificial intelligence changes the world. We thought the world changed over the last 72 hours with Donald Trump. We ain't seen nothing yet as artificial intelligence comes in, but you are in the forefront. I look forward to seeing you as you cross the stage in June and you get your official degree. And then the next few years, when you're out into that scary, exciting universe, I congratulate you for going forward with power and vigor and strength and not being afraid to fail, just going out and doing it. Well done.